How's things in your world, Mr. Connors?
Sometimes already.
Yeah. Oh yes.
Consent items.
This is all the signature stuff, yeah.
Is Vaughn zoomed in?
Yes,
Yes, he is.
yes. Joseph already said, and evidently we don't have to use that big thing. It's just into the mouth.
Perfecto.
Because Ron's gone. I gave you a
Oh.
reminder.
Well, this is so confusing to me.
This is your pen. You want your pen?
Yeah, it's throwing me off.
There we go.
Yeah, this
I
is,
took your, is this the pen you used?
yeah, that's all right.
All right, good evening, everyone. It's 5:30. I would like to call the meeting to order. You'd all stand and join me on the Pledge of Allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, first on the agenda this evening is special recognition. Dr. Pierce will be talking about this.
Tonight we have the privilege of honoring Zachary Glenn, who has truly been an incredibly amazing student board rep. Zach has genuinely elevated the position of student board rep and has truly set a new standard moving forward for the board into the future. He has been engaged, he's been professional, and Zach, your leadership's just been inspirational, truly. I continue to be so impressed with your passion for and your enthusiasm for public service. And of course, I get the benefit of working with Zach during the board meetings and also on the Superintendent Student Advisory Council, and he's been an amazing leader there as well. So tonight is our opportunity to acknowledge Zach. This is his last board meeting because the next board meeting, of course, is the board retreat, and then he gets to graduate. And so, yay, Zach. So I know each board member will want to share a few words of recognition, and then Zach, we have a plaque to present to you. So turn it over to the board.
So Zach, I echo everything that Dr. Pierce said. You need to be closer, sorry. Your knowledge and the amount of time you spent studying these things, on a lot of these things you knew more than I did. I'm like, where'd that come from? So anyway, you really did an amazing job. So thank you very much for what you've done.
Thank you.
So Zachary, you know how I feel, and I always feel like crying when our kids leave because it's like they're our kids for a while. So I've got to see Zachary not only here, and I was always impressed by you were never afraid to ask questions or give information, and I think that's amazing.
Thank you.
But I also got to see Zachary in the Washington State School Directors Association and how he participated with students all over the state, and this may embarrass you, but he's become a role model for students all over the state and how other districts will be having student board reps. And so I'm very, very proud, and I know you will go far, and I hope you keep in touch with us.
Oh, I definitely will.
Zach, number one, you look sharp tonight, like always. Zach's always dressed up really nice and sharp. I really echo the words that have been said. I mean, I didn't know anything about a student rep before I got here, and I was actually shocked at how much better Zach was than I was, honestly, at everything, and how much smarter he is than I am, and I just know that like Tracy said, Zach has absolutely set a new standard for this rep position, and I actually, before he leaves, I want to try to get everything we can. I want to squeeze the the fruit as much as we can, because I really want to have him set up the future of this position, and I just think he's going to go on to do great things, and hopefully including helping our next rep out a lot. So thank you, Zach, for all your work.
No, thank you.
You're a stud.
So after everybody's gone, it's kind of hard to follow last, but I will say I do appreciate you being an advocate for the students, and I think you've done that extremely well. I think you've set the bar high for all the student reps that come after you, as well as the student reps within the state. So I appreciate your willingness to serve on the board with us and your input, and congrats and
Thank
good
you.
luck with whatever the future holds.
Mr. Mabry, you with us?
I am. In
Perfect.
fact, I am glad that I taught you everything you know. I do have a lot of pride in you, Zach, as if you're one of my own sons, and you've done everything. You've been brilliantly, and most of all, you've been polite, and I really appreciate your professionalism. And I too echo the sentiments that we will see you doing other things as you grow, mature in your life. Thanks. Thanks for sharing your life with us for this full year. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
So Zach, I know you have some family members here tonight, and so we want to let you introduce them and maybe give them a little credit for you.
Okay, yeah.
And also, if you want to just say any words as well.
Yeah, no. So I got my mom and my grandparents back there. I couldn't do it without them, whether it be getting home at late and them having food ready for me so I can eat and go straight to bed, or anything, just hanging out in my mom's classroom because it's sometimes too long to come home and come back, and just you name it, they've always been there. And so I have the utmost thanks for them supporting me in this position. I'll go around and thank you guys. So Dr. Pierce, I think, during the interview, the first time I was really meeting you, just knowing that you helped me really relax and felt like you genuinely wanted to hear what my vision for student voice was in the district. And then I get in and I send you like the world's longest emails, and you are sending them around and getting all my questions answered and helping me connect with the people that can give me really thorough answers. So I could tell from that first interaction that student voice was going to be taken really seriously, and that I would have a platform to help connect students. And so I just really knew from day one that dedication was there. So I really appreciate that. Mr. Connors, I thought it was really unique and awesome to watch you help lead the board, from Mr. Adams and Ms. Kinsley having been here for so long, and coming in and being that new leader and really taking that dynamic situation and guiding the district, and it felt super seamless from my perspective. And I just know that when you have 20 some years of experience leave like that, to see such a seamless transition, I was unbelievably impressed. And so I know that speaks to your dedication to this, and I really appreciate it. Ms. Sunvik, you were the first board member I really met on that one Zoom where we had an issue, and I could tell from day one that like student voice was you're a big driver in what you did. And so I am so grateful that you took that Zoom and helped get me here today. Like, I knew you connected me with like, hey, this position exists. If you're passionate about this, you should throw your hat in the ring, and giving me the confidence to do that. I couldn't have done that without you. So I really appreciate that, and all your help with college apps and everything else, and just being that guiding voice. Mr. Valentine, I knew that like the first interaction I had, and Mr. Galbraith, you were there as well, was at the WASDA conference, and you sat down for 15, 20, maybe even 30 minutes, and you're just like, I want to hear what you have to say. Like, what is your vision? What are things in the district you have issues with or don't, or how can we support you? And so I knew from day one with you guys getting on that if I had issues or concerns, you guys were there to support me in every way. So I really appreciate that, and I think that speaks to your dedication to students. So everyone, thank you so much. And Ms. Lord for the conversations before the board meetings, putting up with me getting there half an hour early and small talking and everything else. So I really appreciate it. Mr. Mabry, you were always someone that I looked up to even before board meetings that I had been to, because I had seen you, and I forget exactly what the issue was, but you had changed your mind on something. It was a few years back, and I wish I remembered what it was. But I remember seeing you like in a meeting, hear different perspectives, and really change and listen. And I think that's something that I struggle with. Anyone that's ever had arguments with me or whatever, I tend to be very my perspective. And so I knew something that like when I stepped in, having heard that and seen you you be so open to what other people had to say and really putting your personal feelings aside and listening to them. That was something that really stood out to me and something I tried to exemplify in this role. So thank you.
Well, Zach, we have a plaque for you from Kennewick School District, and it says an appreciation of your dedication and service on behalf of the students and staff of Kennewick School District. Zachary Glenn, honored member, Kennewick School Board 2021 to 2022.
Thank you.
So you take this with you. And you're not done yet. We still have a meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
I've got my pen and paper ready.
Okay.
And questions.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Okay, next on the agenda is communications from parents, staff, and district residents. So, the board appreciates hearing from parents, staff, and district residents at our regular board business meetings. The board of directors provides an opportunity for communication from parents, staff, and district residents. This time is reserved during our working meeting for the board to listen to comments, input, and information. The board does not respond to comments provided, as our goal is to listen and to learn. As appropriate, the board will ask the superintendent and her staff to look into any issues raised. Please note, it is important for all community members to feel welcome and safe during the board business meeting. During the public comment period, please refrain from any positive or negative expressions, such as clapping or booing in response to a person who is providing public comment. If any audience member has any concerns about how they're being treated by another attendee, please contact the cabinet member to report the issue. The board does not take public comments on issues related to personnel or individually named staff members at board meetings. However, you can email the board with any such comments. Okay, our first speaker this evening will be David Hall.
Way to go, Zach, first of all.
Thank you.
I'm David Hall. I'm a teacher at Kennewick High, where Zach is a student, so well done, Zach. I just wanted to read a couple of things. First thing is from the Revised Code of Washington, RCW 28A.405.030. Must teach patriotism. It shall be the duty of all teachers to endeavor to impress on the minds of their pupils the principles of morality, truth, justice, temperance, humanity, and patriotism. To teach them to avoid idleness, profanity, and falsehood, to instruct them in the principles of free government, and to train them up in the true comprehension of the rights, duty, and dignity of American citizenship. Next thing I want to read is from an article published by WEA in August 12th this last year. Educators are experts on making sure our students learn honesty about who we are, integrity in how we treat others, and courage to do what's right. Recent broad-ranging attacks on how we teach and what we teach has created confusion about how we can safely continue teaching accurate and updated curricula to our students to help them understand our past and present in order to create a better future. Okay, you are protected in teaching the curriculum. One thing I was introduced to in teaching curriculum at Kennewick High was Alexander Solzhenitsyn, who lived through the communist takeover and then the fall of that communist regime in Soviet Russia. And he said once, and I would leave you with this, this is my charts, anybody who could hear this, students, staff, teachers, parents, board members, admin, you can resolve to live your life with integrity. Let your credo be this: let the lie come into the world, let it even triumph, but not through me.
Thank you, Mr. Hall. Okay, next on our list tonight is Jojo Davis.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to try not to cry. Like most educators, today was not a day we looked forward to. And I just want to say that as I sit here and I'm going to listen to everybody, I just want people to know that if you're not talking about school safety, if you're not talking about mental health, if you're not talking about our children, maybe you shouldn't talk tonight. It's my 2 cents. I did have the opportunity to go to community and schools and their breakfast, and Michael Connors was so sweet to me. He said, I was a little confused at what you said at the last meeting. I said, well, that's great, because You know, we all sit here and we think we're crystal clear speaking to all of you. And I know Mike has told me a couple times, I didn't get what you're saying. So I decided I needed part 2. Last time, I really wanted to encourage you to look at the whole child. You know, I gave you a long list of all the things that our students go through. And my charge was not to say, Kennewick School District, fix it. You know, I think I said that. But what I didn't get to is our partnerships and sitting at Community and Schools Breakfast and really listening to how they partner with us to address our kids. Oh, I'm gonna speed up. Made me want to just ask the board, the community, everyone that's listening, everyone's here, think about the partnerships that we're missing out on. The city of Kennewick, our sidewalks, brush clearing, crosswalk lighted areas and lighted crosswalks. Could someone stand up and say, I'm going to partner with City of Kennewick to have our student needs be met? KID, safety with the irrigation canal paths that our students walk down. They look like paths, but frankly, they're dangerous in some areas. Trios, health opportunities, clinics for educational talks, more screening than just the nurses give. Insurance and big partnerships, churches. We're lucky at Highlands, we have West Highlands, and they do great. They volunteer at our activities, they have outreach. Again, I'm not asking for you guys to fix it all, but we're the heart of the community. That's what people see as schools, but it's really, we're a part of the body. We're just a part of the body of our community. I just want to challenge each of you. Today, don't rehash what was in the past. I want you to look forward to what we are going to do tomorrow. I feel like we're just lying to each other. We're fear mongering, and I'm tired of the lack of partnerships. And my time's ending. I've just challenged you like I'm challenged myself. Who can I partner up with to make Highlands better, to make our Kennewick School District better? What can we do as a community?
Wonderful. Thank you. Okay, next speaker is Alida Alvarez. Alida, I'm sorry if I said that wrong. I apologize. Thank you.
Thank you, Board. I'm here today to speak to you as an educator, but most importantly as a parent. As you all know, yesterday was a tragic day for many families in Uvalde, Texas. Children and teachers were gunned down by an 18-year-old student who had dropped out of school for being bullied. This morning I read that at Southridge, a racist video was made after a shooting in Buffalo. Can you believe that? Here in our own district, students are being racist towards African Americans and Hispanics. I am Hispanic. My husband is Hispanic. My daughters are Hispanic. And you expect me to feel safe taking them to school where I know that behavior is out of control, where I know that students are bullying, where I know that students are being racist towards others, which, by the way, so your team might not be so bad to teach if this is happening. Where I know that the only thing 2 of my board members care about is the topic of masks. Where I hear them complain about critical race theory being taught, where they show no care, even though students have come up here to this pole asking to please look at the issue that will be unraveling even faster now that the levy did not pass. I am here to ask you to please get off your high horse and work together and look and find a solution to the problem that will come as a result of the levy not passing. Look at ways to help our students, teachers, and families find a way to get the next levy to pass, so that our students' programs don't get cut, so that our nurses get more support, so that our resource classes get more support, so that our life skill classes get more support, so that our counselors get more support, so that our schools get more support, because it's the Title I schools that will suffer from the levy not passing. Other schools have robust PTOs that can raise thousands of dollars. Meanwhile, our failed levies mean that the students at my school will lose reading support and special education support. So before we become the next district on the news, getting thoughts and prayers, please consider your priorities. Because those students that were gunned down look like my daughters. They look like my students. That teacher that was slaughtered was a 4th grade teacher just like me, who looks like me. Those students that were killed in cold-blooded are part of my community, my migrant students that were killed, and from families that come from farming towns. Now, by the looks of it, our own students in our own schools being racist towards others, and with the lack of support to help improve our students' behavior and provide more SEL support in schools, we are heading that way. I tell you all parents out there, all of you, to please hold your children and your loved ones close every day, because some of these board members have no clue what is going on in those schools and only care about themselves and their own beliefs. They can't see past their own ego and only care about their own.
Ms. Alvarez, I'm sorry, your time is up.
Does anyone see me their time?
I'll see my time.
Thank you.
This morning, my husband kissed my daughters goodbye and held them extra tight before going to school himself, because we have been reminded that racism is alive and well in our community. What are you as a decision maker for our district going to do about it? Please don't tell me that the answer is to make sure no one has to wear a mask. Please tell me that you will provide support for our students, for all our students, not just the ones that look like you, but the ones that look like me. Thank you.
Thank you. Next speaker is Kat Espinita.
Hello there, and I'm really sorry for your pain, ma'am. I agree, racism needs to stop. My name is Kat Espinita, and I'm a child advocate and a whistleblower. I currently have a $12 million tort claim against the Richland School District for the mandates that they put against our children, and I'm sorry, we won't agree on this, ma'am, but what you need to know is this school district took $58 million, $666,912. Our school district took $58 million. And so, excuse me. So I want to bring to your attention that you guys also signed an oath of office to abide by the Constitution, and you have to reject any mandates that do not meet up to the supreme law of the land, because a law and a mandate are not the same. This is a mandate, this is a law. So unless you have a contract with me and you, or unless you have a contract with the parents for their children, you have zero right to mask them or to ask for any vaccinations. Now, monkeypox is coming, I'm hearing, and new mandates are coming. The new fear cult is coming. Children have 0% chance of dying from COVID-19. And as of this time, we've had 9 suicides in Tri-Cities since 2020 of March, when this 9 students that have committed suicide in our area. She's right, the pain is horrible. The kids have behavioral problems. This is something that's psychologically damaging them, and a lot of the parents are blind to even knowing this. So I would ask you to please, I know you took the funds, it's okay. Listen, I will stand with you guys. I will fight with you guys if you reject these mandates that will be coming next year, because they're already talking about it. They tell us what they're going to do in advance. And so we know mandates are going to be coming back. Breathe in your freedom now, because it's coming back. So I ask you again to please fight for our children. This is a lie. This COVID-19 pandemic is a hoax perpetrated by our government. And you guys are under a corporation, all of you, and you are liable. Now you're liable, and you need to have surety bonds. And I hope you do have your surety bonds, because Richland, they don't have their surety bonds, and they didn't. 2 laws broken just because of that. So we're investigating, and we will bring investigations here. I will let you chew on that through the summer, but if masks or vaccinations are forced on our children, then I will be coming back and we will start the investigation, and a tort claim will also be going against the school district. And that's all I have to say. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next speaker is Ubi Creek.
Well, I haven't done on speaking, but I will.
I'm sorry, did you not sign up?
No, that's okay.
Oh, I was gonna say, your name's right there.
I haven't been here in a while. I'm Ubi Creek and I live at 3219 West Canal Drive. And I have been a supporter of the school district for many, many years and continue, and hope to continue to do that, even though I am looking at maybe retirement here pretty quick. But I want to say thank you to all the board for your continued work. I have run for the board a couple of times, and I came for 5 years in a row and sat at school board meetings, but never made it up there. However, know that I am out here in the community trying to support all families, all students. I hear you, ma'am. I ran because I felt discrimination and racial issues. I think we're doing a little better, but we can do a little bit better. I don't see anybody up there that looks like us still yet, but I think there's hope and we can continue to do that. I hope to be the hope that's out in the community too. So let's bind our hearts together and let's work for our kids and our students and our parents that we can make a difference. And thank you to the admin. I know you guys don't get a lot of thank yous, but thank you for all that you do for our community as a whole and as individuals. And sometimes I think I'm glad I never made it over there because you guys got a lot of stuff on your shoulders. So thank you very much just for even letting me come and speak. And I'm out here if you need anything. Thanks.
Thank you. Okay, our next speaker is Tina Gregory.
Thank you for your time tonight. I want to thank you for the things you do for our community. I know you have a long road ahead with the levies not passing. I hope you understand it's a lot to do with our constitutional rights being taken away. Also, the immoral agendas being pushed by the teachers' unions and woke culture. Mandates are not law. I hope you're prepared to stand against them in the future. I'm calling on all of you to help us get Planned Parenthood, CRT, BLM, LGBTQ, pronouns, CNN, and fake media out of our teaching. If we can't teach abstinence and about the Creator, then we shouldn't teach about these other things. It's not the school's job to indoctrinate our children. It's their job to teach our children reading, writing, math, etc. Children being confused about sexual decisions are normal. We need to be there for them and have counselors that can help them. Our schools have been taken over by evil agendas. We need God in them again. The lie about keeping church and state has got us into this situation. It was written so that the state wouldn't come into the church and tell them what to do. I'm also calling on all of you to teach the Constitution and Bill of Rights again. Clean our libraries of the smut that is being brought in. We the people don't want our children indoctrinated any longer. Death and life are in the power of the tongue. Take away the wicked from before the king, and his throne will be established in righteousness. Those who have no rule over their own spirit are like a city broken down without walls. We need God in America again.
Thank you. Our next speaker will be Linda Stevenson.
Before I start, Zach, congrats and thank you. You've done an amazing job.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. All right, I'm starting. So, regarding the Critical Writers Handbook from the last meeting, the article in question that was discussed 2 weeks ago does not in any way describe a rape. The purpose of the article is to illustrate a changing point of view of Aunt Minnie. The book is for 12th graders, many of whom are already adults. Of course, they should have the opportunity to study mature themes. They probably have already been confronted with them. I don't agree with the board's need to sanitize and ban learning materials just because it makes you uncomfortable. But I see the direction after KSD school board business was discussed publicly last weekend. And I quote, "I want you to know that we are actively hunting these things in our schools. We are actively hunting these topics. And we are absolutely 100% on offense. And I know they're getting sick of us. And you know what they can do when they get sick of us? They can go to a different school district. End quote. So KSD is effectively giving the middle finger to about half of the community, telling them to leave, go somewhere else. I thought that the role of the school board was to support every student and every family. I appreciate the hard work of the school board, I do. And I would like to see the school board remain focused on the learning of our students and the operation and safety of our schools, instead of focusing on a hunt to remove learning materials from our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Marianne Bloxham. Okay, our next speaker is Annette Rose.
Good evening. I've been asked, why do I think the levy has failed twice? I hope that you all understand that most of us parents are not here because we have nothing better to do for 4 hours twice a month. I don't particularly enjoy speaking, and honestly, I don't really feel heard when I do. So I hope that you take to heart the things that the parents and students are saying when they speak here, because they are telling you why the levy failed. Here are some of the things that I have felt and heard. When I sat at the board retreat a few months ago, it was very clear that money was the most important thing to this board. I get it, we need money to function. But in a time when our schools and students were literally in turmoil, all that seemed to matter was money. I've been at almost every school board meeting for the past 6 months. That night and many other nights, I hear suggestions and comments from board members that are completely disregarded. The meeting after the levy failed, where the discussion was focused on putting it back on the ballot immediately, Micah actually suggested it might be too early to pass it again. He was ignored. Literally, no one even acknowledged that he had spoken. I have seen this over and over the past few months. I will tell you that with the new board members have a pretty good grasp on what the public wants, I feel. This whole line in the sand, it's us against them, there are more of us than there are of them, has no place on our school boards. Yet meeting after meeting, eyes are rolled, suggestions dismissed, and chest puffed up to show who has power. We, the people, as in the parents and the students, should have the power. Meeting after meeting, you discuss district funds. I hope you can appreciate how it sounds to us sitting out here to hear we need more money past the levy, and then the next presentation we hear it's not cost effective to spend $10,000 fixing buses as they break. We should buy all brand new buses at $100,000 each instead. I get that there's money allocated to certain things, but maybe that's something that we get to address. In Idaho, state spends $7,000 per student. In Washington, it's between $12,000 and $15,000. Why? We definitely are not getting better educations. In fact, their kids went to school maskless, unlike our kids. My guess is most of the difference is administration wages. There needs to be a long, hard look at the amount of money being spent on administration in our district. It seems pretty excessive for the education that our students are receiving. The new rule that you want to pass about letting the administration decide how long a parent gets to observe their child in a classroom is a bad idea. Parents have been saying for a year now, we see what's happening, we want change. And instead of listening to them, you want to make even more restrictive rules. And that rule or law, I'm not sure exactly what it is, but it's in direct conflict of RCW 28A 605020, which in short says every school district board shall assure parents access to their children's classrooms. Our country was founded and built from the ground up. Our local school boards, city councils, commissioners are actually the most powerful people in this nation, along with we the people. We've allowed they, the government, to take over and have had enough. We forget who works for who. We want open negotiations with the union. We want cameras in classrooms. We want transparency. We want males in male bathrooms and females in female bathrooms. We want boys on boys sports teams and girls able to play and compete with other female athletes, not having to compete with males. We want a school board that has the best interests of our children in mind. We want a board who will stand up to illegal mandates and rules that are in direct violation of RCWs and our own Washington State Constitution. We want teachers to teach. We want a safe place for our children to learn. Nothing changed between levy votes. Yes, masks came off, but not because of anything that this board did. In fact, word is that if our school board had voted for masks optional like Richland did, our superintendent would have overridden the board's decision to close schools like Redinger did. Our superintendents work for our school boards, not the other way around. The school board represents the students and the parents. Yes, you passed a vaccine resolution, but it was also made clear that it only stands until a law is made. Until this board starts standing up for our kids and making choices that serve them, I don't know how we will get a levy or bond to pass in Kennewick, which is very sad. I think it had been over 40 years since it hadn't passed. But people are seeing what's happening in our schools and they don't like it. It's time to listen and build trust back with the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, that takes care of our communications with parent staff. Thank you.
Mike, can I ask one clarifying question?
I'm sorry, yes, sir.
Could I ask one clarifying question to Dr. Pierce? The comment about banning a curriculum, that's not what we did. We've just pulled it back for review again, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Perfect. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I forgot. Do we have anyone online with public comment, Ron? No. No? Okay. Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay. Next on our agenda is consent items.
Move to approve consent items as written.
I'll second.
First and second, any questions or comments? If not, I will call for the roll call vote, please.
Mr. Galbraith,
Abstain.
Mr. Valentine,
Yes.
Ms. Sunday,
Yes.
Mr. Mabry,
Yes.
Mr. Connors.
Yes.
Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. All right, next on the list is superintendent and board member reports. So, Dr. Pierce?
Okay, well, tonight I thought I would highlight a few of our great community partnerships that we have and just highlight a few of some recent community events I've attended and others have attended, and I know they were actually mentioned by a couple of our speakers. So over the past couple of weeks, I've had the opportunity to attend the Communities and Schools Spring Into Action event, and Mr. Connors was also there, as were other people. There was a panel presentation by students and their Communities and Schools coordinator, and it was just a wonderful testament to the important role that Communities and Schools plays in helping support our students and our families in our schools, and so that was a great event. We also just had our annual Ksd Retirement Celebration, and it was really well attended. A couple board members were able to attend, and lots of friends and families, and just many, many years of service to the district and the community represented in that room. And so it was wonderful to have the opportunity to honor folks who are moving on and retiring. And then the following afternoon was the annual ATP, Action Team for Partnership celebration, and that's where our ATP leaders from all of the schools come together and they share all of the community involvement and family engagement events and strategies that they've used throughout the year. And so that's a great celebration and showcase of the importance of family engagement and involvement in our schools. We're also proud that we've got a junior achievement presence in our schools. In fact, Matt Scott is the liaison, and he serves on the Junior Achievement Board, and they have an annual bowling event and fundraiser, and so a number of us got to participate and bowl in that event and support a junior achievement last week. And then just today, I was able to attend the Tri-City Chamber annual luncheon and community recognition. And this is their first event that they've held in person. I think they said in 800 plus days. And there were over 500 community members, business leaders, and community leaders present at the luncheon, and they give awards out. And so that was just a great time to really see the community coming together. And then tomorrow's the United Way Breakfast of Champions campaign celebration, and I serve on the United Way board, and of course our district, our schools and staff participate in the annual United Way campaign. That's a long-standing something that our schools do, and so I'll be attending that breakfast tomorrow with a number of folks on the team. Also continuing spring school visits. So one of my favorite things to do is to get out in our schools, see the great work that's happening in our classrooms, see the excited students, whether they're high school students or middle school students or elementary students. So over the past couple of weeks, I visited Sagecrest, Tritech, Hawthorne, Kennewick High School, Westgate, MCP, Delta, and Eastgate, and then tomorrow I'll be at KDC, and of course that's our preschool program. So there's just lots of great things happening in our community and in our schools, and so for my report tonight, I wanted to just focus on some positive things that are specific to our school district, and just highlight the fact that it really is the strength of the parent partnership, the community partnership, and the involvement, and what we can accomplish for our students and for the whole community as we, work together toward the greater good. So that's what I wanted to share tonight.
Wonderful, thank you. So Zach, this is it.
I know.
This is your chance. What have you not told us so far?
I know.
Don't screw up, Zach. It's your last chance. Don't screw up.
I'm light tonight too. So I did my normal stuff with WASDA. We kind of did an end of the year thing, said bye to some kids that I've kind of built relationships with over the years. So that was awesome. And then pretty minor, I got to go to Buddy Club Prom, which is something we haven't been able to do in close to 2 years now. So that was super exciting to see that event get put on. And I think especially our life skills and our students with special needs really took a hit from COVID, and so seeing those events and those services really pick up this school year. As I come to the end and reflecting on some big wins, I think that's definitely a big win I've seen. So it was really good to see that event. And normally I like to help plan and put on everything, but that was one of the events that I just got to show up to, and so that was really that was nice. I went to Kennewick High. They did a jazz band concert kind of year thing, so that was good to see. There was one other thing I was going to say, but I'm forgetting it. We'll just end it there. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Gabe, you have anything?
Yeah, so this past Friday, I visited another 5 schools. So not quite going to reach my goal of all the schools this year, but I'll be pretty close. I went to Cascade, Canyon View, Desert Hills, Chinook, and Sagecrest, and had the privilege of hearing a band and orchestra concert / sing-along at Desert Hills. I got to pass out cougar paws at Cascade and sharing some of the fun things that the students do there. I got to read to some kids in the resource room at Chinook. At Canyon View, I got to tour that school and go in and see the life skills kids and got a hug from one of them actually. So, and then I attended the retirees celebration this past week. So that's it. That's all I got.
Thank you. Micah?
Yeah. First thing I'll say is I wish Miss Alvarez would stay around and we could talk, because communication goes both ways. I will say that I spent about a couple hours in Legacy High School and Endeavor High School, and I just loved it there. I really did. I thought it was so great. And in talking to Paul Osborne, who's leaving as principal, we had a really nice discussion about some really cool things that we could do to bring the community and actually help those kids have a vision. I've long said that I believe that kids need to graduate with 2 things. They need to graduate with the skills and then the belief. And I really, I'm going to take it upon myself to work with that Legacy High School to help those kids really get a belief that they can do anything, and that they can do anything because we live in this great country. And I'm really excited to work on a project that him and I discussed, and Tracy and I discussed a little bit today, and I'm really excited about that. Also, we had Gabe, you forgot something. We had the opportunity to interview new student reps to replace Zach, and they were great. They're wonderful. I won't let any cats out of the bag, but really excited about how that's going to go. And so that was really, I had a really nice week.
Thank you. Diane?
So I did go to the, along with Gabe, to the retirement celebration. Somebody was going to add all the numbers up, but it's multiple hundreds of years of experience that those people all shared for 40-some years, a lot of them. So that was very impressive. Also went last night to the League of Urban Latin American Citizens monthly meeting. And they work with our district. A couple of things that they've done was just recently the, what do we call it? The Cesar Chavez, Doris Huerta art program, and some of our students won some things.
Poster contest.
Poster contest, yes. So some of our students won that. And then, oh gosh, Noche de Leones, which is the night of the Lionesses, so the lady lions. Not our Kennewick High, but women in our community. Some are in our own district who are great role models for our female, for all of our students, but for our female students specifically. And I didn't get to attend that, but I did get to go back and watch it, and that was kind of a tearjerker. You were there. Dr. Pierce was there, and it was pretty wonderful. Also, Key Connections, which is Kennewick Empowering Youth through Ben Franklin Health Department. We are also a partner with them, working with helping students stay away from drugs, alcohol, and other non-good habits. And they are a great group for us to work with. And then this morning, the Washington DOH update, health update, just to stay ready to know what we need to do to keep everybody safe.
Thank you. Mr. Mabry, do you have a report?
I do have a report. First, I want to thank Tracy for starting us off on a positive note and apologize up front for what I have to say. I didn't have such a great week. I was getting ready for vacation Friday and was hit with a video that took my breath away. Absolutely just knocked me right off of my feet. And I just don't see the outrage. I don't see it at this meeting right now. Haven't seen it in emails. Are we okay with this behavior? And then yesterday, are we okay? Are we not alarmed? And guys, I appreciate what you do. I appreciate you getting out in the schools. I appreciate you making reports. Diane, you do a wonderful job. Gabe, you guys, you do wonderful, but we are in a crisis. We cannot sit down and not say right now, at this moment, we have a crisis on our hands, and we need to let our citizenship know that we see this as a crisis, and we need to let them know that it's not just tonight. It wasn't just Friday when there was a declared, I'm not going to say the word, day. My heart still aches that we as a board are not in crisis mode right now. There's a problem. That's how my week went. That's all I have.
Thank you, sir. Okay, it's kind of tough to follow that one. My report, I was just going to talk about the communities and school breakfast that I went to. It was a very, very powerful presentation. The work they do is so important and is changing lives for a lot of kids. And it was, some of those stories were tough to listen to, but the fact that we have positive outcomes and we have people who are really working to make a big difference in our community and doing it pretty selflessly is amazing. So I learned a great deal and was very happy I spent the time with you. Plus I get to have breakfast with Jojo. So I mean, like, you know, life was good. Perfect. Okay. Next on our agenda is reports and discussions. First up is the preliminary budget. Mr. Roberts will be presenting.
All right, we'll try to kind of bring the whole budgets full circle from the past meetings and get through this hopefully pretty quickly. So just some summary information here. You know, the levy, we've talked about the levy failed. That's a $20 million reduction in funding property tax levy equalization for school year 22-23 compared to 21-22. We're looking at some efficiencies. We've done some reductions. We'll continue to look at that throughout next year. We have some vacancies we haven't filled. Those are still in the budget. If we don't fill those will save some money, for the following year. And we're working through that. We have ESSER funding. We use that to maintain staff as well as fund balance, combination of that. And the big important thing is levy planning for the next election date in 2023. And that needs to start, sooner than later for sure. And then we have some student learning money there with ESSER and working through that. Some of it's used for tutoring, and there's some other things to get after with those funds. Communities and schools, that's been brought up. We have 9 schools, going to add 2 more for next year, Cascade and Southgate. So, even with, the levy failed, there's other money that we try to use, and we are going to add those two programs there with, combination of learning assistance money, doing some things with title money, your non-basic ed type money for that. And we have, the mental health resource there at the high schools. We had trouble at the middle schools, and, we might have to shift gears a little bit and try to figure out how to, maybe not contract for those services and do something different, because we're just not getting the contractor to be able to hire the staff with the shortages. So I've talked to, Brian Levitt, who works with those people, and trying to figure out maybe an alternative to getting something going. So that's disappointing that it hasn't taken off for the middle schools like we wanted. And then some of the other funding that we haven't really touched on, that's a little separate, learning assistance, LAP funding, primarily for catching kids up that are below grade level. That's about a $10.9 million pot of money. 7.12 is a little more flexible money that, like I said, goes for additional teachers catching kids up and below grade level. And then 3.8 million is specific to targeted to schools with greater than 50% poverty. So that's 23 schools, and we added a few schools this year as their poverty level went up past 50%, and that allowed Cascade and Southgate to get those that Communities in Schools program. And then title money, not a big difference there. About 15.3 million in total, federal title revenue, to about 15.6. Some bilingual money, 4.4, and these are part of those restricted funds. We have title schools, 17 this year, expanding to 22, and those schools get that money based on their poverty level ranking those. You have to serve schools with 75% or more poverty, so that's maybe 7 to 9 schools, but then you can go back down as far as you can, as long as you can spread the money out and make it work. And we pick up, we're going to have 22 schools total, and we're now getting down to schools, say, with as low as 45% poverty, to try to get some of that money to those schools, and then that allows us to do a few different things and hit a few more needs. We talked a few months ago, Tritech. Next year they're going to be starting on this 10,000 square foot building. Pre-tech and pre-vet programs expanding. Out to bid in September, October, supposed to be completed summer 2023. The legacy, we've, yeah. Go ahead.
Vic, could you touch on the funding for Tritech? There was, I've had a couple questions about that because there was an article in the Tri-City Herald, and I know the board is aware and voted on the kind of temporary use of the funds and so forth, but I just want to make sure that that's clear to anybody who's watching into the community about where is that money coming from? How does Tritech get funded? If you wouldn't mind just touching on that.
Yeah, Tritech, based on their enrollment, they get their own funding allocation based on the number of students. And Tritech has money they've saved. They'll go towards this building, and they'll fund the building over 2 or 3 years and pay the money back. You'll see a placeholder where some of their money's in the general fund, and they'll transfer some money back into that capital fund to help to pretty much fully fund that over, I think, 3 or 4 years. The teen parent program at Legacy, so we added a portable there. It's been a long process. It was probably installed fall, winter, but now we're going through permits, and it should be ready to go next year. Things just take a lot longer. since COVID and, getting things rolling, but that should be up and running next year. Food service program, community eligibility provision. So that means that all our schools will offer free meals, which is basically the same as this year under the program, but that program this year will go away. And with community eligibility provision, we'll be able to offer that to all our schools, and that's really great for students and families and everybody there. The Ridgeview Elementary construction, the bid opening is scheduled for June 20th, so it has been advertised. So we hope to have many contractors bid on that and some good prices. Target construction completion by December 2023. Ridgeview will be moving the Fruitland building, so there's a little bit of work needs to be done on that to get that ready and for Ridgeview. And Ridgeview has 3 portables. Plans are probably to move 1 or 2 to Cascade and 1 to Amon Creek, and that's where those will go. And those are, Cascade needs some extra special ed capacity and room there, and Amon Creek is pretty full and could use some more space. Any questions on any of those items? And then we'll kind of move on here, a little bit of enrollment. So lots of numbers here. So here's our projected numbers here for 21-22. You can see the budget. So we're well under here, the budget amount. And the top section here is really the money that's pretty much unrestricted. The funds, basic education. The bottom section here, you can see your TriTech is here. This money is all restricted to these programs. So over here to budget to 22-23. So we're not budgeting conservatively. 16,446 here is where we project for this year, and 16,452. So really not a lot of increase. You can see some numbers here for Endeavor, MCP online, and these numbers could change. If these numbers drop, we would expect these students to end up back up in our schools, not leave our district. Same thing here with MCP. So in 16,452, compare this back to pre-COVID, 16,885. That's 420 students that were still below where we'd like to be. And, we're not going to get all these 400 kids back. Some of them probably left and they're probably not going to come back. Unfortunately, they could be at private schools or somewhere else. But I think the last meeting we talked about, enrollment's an issue. And this is about $3 million, the difference from here to here. And that is a big issue. But the bigger issue is to get the public back and the parents to try to pass the levy for the next time that goes out. And down here, totals, we're projecting 8,230 when you add the totals up here, and budgeting 8,375. Some of the difference here is running start. That was down quite a bit from prior years as students, I think running start was all virtual, online. Some kids with COVID, they need to go back to their main school because of credits and didn't have enough credits to really take the running start classes. But that should increase there. And then TriTech is expecting, with some new programs, 500 students, which is well up from 465 and well up from where they're at this year, about 420. So that's aggressive. So hopefully TriTech can get those numbers. We just don't want to see those kids come from up here because that takes money away from things. And then another point, special education. So that was a budget at 2,400, and we are going to get around 2,400 students this year. And conservative here, again, 2,400. Right now we have about 2,530. The numbers have went up April and May for special education. They've bounced back up. So hopefully next year this will increase well above 2,400. That'll result in some more money, but then again with special ed, that's going to result in them needing some more staff also. And you can see the district poverty level here over the years. We're always right around 58%. So that's where we're at. Hopefully, these are conservative, I hope, and we'll end up with some more enrollment than what's on here. So this is what that revenue is based on when we look at the revenue sheet here, changes in revenue, the increases, the decreases, it's all based on enrollment. Here's a little bit of the history we've done here the last 2 or 3 months. You can see revenue changes. Again, this is the unrestricted part, not the TriTech and CTE, that funding. Some pre-levy numbers here, and then the levy failed. This is where you get that $20 million loss of revenue, $8.3 million loss overall. And then some of the changes in the expenditures. And we started out about a $12.5 million increase, and we whittled that down to about $6.4 million. Some of the changes, we tried to look at $2 to $3 million of staff, reductions, moving some things around. That's up in here. And then the non-staff, we were looking at a couple $1 million there to reduce some budgets. So that's in here. So $8.3 million reduction in revenue, $6.4 million increase in staff costs and other costs. The total then is about $14.7 million we have to come up with. And the numbers, the budget prior year was $10.4 million negative, and then you add the $14 million, that's $25.1. And previously we've been talking about $30 million. So that's the last month or so when we were talking. So we whittled that down to about $25 million. You see the numbers here for the total budget. So $25 million here. We add some ESSER money, about $10 million. That gets it down to about 15.1 that we need to use the fund balance, and then we're down around 34 million. So as you recall from the other meeting, we were 27, 28. So we've kind of done some stuff there to get that looking a little better. And probably about 2 million of this will be a budget as transfer for that TriTech project. So we'll keep going here. And here's a little summary here, keeping this without, ESSER and some of those things. Here's we'll budget 15 million, 15.7 of ESSER, 5.7 placeholder for some expenditures there. That's where you get that 10 million. And that leaves 15 million from the fund balance of some of the money we have. Looking at the revenues. So the change in the above is the unrestricted. That goes back to this $8.3 million deduction. Some of those numbers here is that 20 million loss from property taxes, levy equalization, increase in the state apportionment, and then special education increase, and some other small ones there. And then here's the restricted money. You can see TriTech funding. We talked about that. And this is their money here, 5.8 million is what we expect those students to generate next year. And you can see some of the other changes. A big increase here in CTE as that program's grown, and about 1.1 million more dollars than what was budgeted 21-22. And just down the list, another big one here, food service. So expecting with CEP and things, some projections there, about $1.4 million more to the food service. Now that's going to get pretty much spent with buying food, and the more kids you serve for meals, the more cost you have there. And then we budget some contingency money, some other things here that aren't any huge increases there, but 269 million of the revenue there. And then we're going to look at kind of revenue and programs here. So this is without any ESSER money. So you can take this is the local funded up here. Here's about 27.9 million. Losing some of the money up here with the property taxes, or some of the differences there in terms of here's the revenue we get, here's the expenditures charged to those local funds, and leaves about 27.9. So then we get some of this money down here from these restricted programs. This is all overhead and the indirect that we get from those programs. So there's certain rates that the district, 4 to 5%, that we're allowed to take for all the support, all the administration, the accounting office, the payroll, and all those things. So that's about 2.7 million. So then you net that, and that's where you get the 25.18 million we noted on the other couple pages. Some of these programs down here are pass-through programs, Running Start, Open Doors. We get the money and it gets passed through to CBC or the programs that do it. And then there's a little bit of indirect that comes back to the district. Skill Center, Career Tech Education, same thing there. Although they get the bulk of the money, there is operations type of support money that helps with the budget on the local funded side. And then down through the list here, here's the Learning Assistance Program, again, indirect and overhead. So that's the 25.1 million. And then we add in the ESSER money here, 10 million, that's a 15.1 million. And then this is the overall budget. You can see the prior year, here's some ESSER here above, 12.2 versus 8.2. And then we're doing 15.7 and 5.7 for the net 10. And then here's that transfer placeholder there for about $2 million. It could be transferred to the capital fund from Tritech's money that they generate here in the general fund. So that leaves about 32.8. And there's quite a bit of cost up in here still. There's vacant positions that won't be filled. There's probably $1 million of that at least. And if we manage budget throughout the year, we should get through 22, 23, okay. I know there's some comments about title schools and losing staff and getting their budgets cut. And really the staffing we're looking at is all based on enrollment. So those title schools, they'd only lose staff really if their enrollment was way down. And, part of that right sizing and doing some of that. And then just want to go over this next slide. We have to do the 4-year projections, and we've already went over these funds. And I need to do a 4-year projection for the general fund. So you'll see one on June 22nd, we'll have the general fund and, 4 years projected out. And these are the other funds we've discussed, but that's the ASB fund we have not discussed. So I will go over that. Revenue about 1.7 million versus expenditures of 2 million. The ASB group the last couple of years really hasn't, pursued a lot of, field trips and, traveling and things like that they do. So they have a pretty aggressive budget here. I think about of this revenue, 500,000 or so is student type fees, 500,000 is athletic type fees, and then another 500,000 is, what's the other, student ASB clubs, I believe is the other one. And that's the bulk of their money. So anyway, that's ASB we hadn't talked about. These other ones we have discussed, and we'll clean this up, make sure it's correct for June 22nd. And we'll get the general fund 4-year budget. And we've talked about the self-insured, that's another one. You'll see the slide June 22nd. And other than that, that's really where we're at. And we'll finalize. There could be a few tweaks to the general fund, but nothing major, hopefully. And be ready for June 22nd.
Thank you. Questions? You don't have any questions? Diane?
I know I asked you this once before. The 2 million that goes to Tritech will come back when?
Well, they would get, that's during the year. So the next summer, they would say, I want to do 1 million or I want to do 2 million. Then they decide, Tritech would decide on that. And I would say, well, you have this much money, you need to transfer to the capital fund. And if they say we only want to do 1 million, I might say, well, no, it looks like you got enough money to do 2 million.
Okay, thank you.
And they do have money in the capital fund to fund that project. They just don't want to draw it all down all at once. I think they have about 2.5 million in their capital fund.
Any questions? Mr. Mabry, do you have any questions?
No, I do not.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, sir.
All right, thanks.
Very cool. Thank you, sir. Okay, next on the agenda is the K-12 growth and proficiency targets. And before we start, we'll get Gabe. So can we do this in 21 minutes or less? What do you think?
I think so.
You think so? All right, because Mr. Galbraith needs to leave by 7 o'clock, so I want to make sure we have a smooth transition.
Okay, so tonight we're presenting some academic data on our students, and we follow a reporting calendar, and so I'll go over that very briefly and highlight a couple of things, and then I'm going to turn it over to Matt Scott to really walk us through some of the specific data. So as we all know, we do have a mission and vision that is all focused on our students and success for our students. We have 3 student-focused goals. First and foremost, that our students are all safe, known, and valued, that our students are engaged learners, and ultimately ready for their future. And those 3 goals really go hand in hand. Last board meeting, we focused on the safe, known, and valued goal, and we shared data and information with the board. Tonight, we're focusing on the engaged learners goal. And what we mean by engaged learners is that all students are provided relevant, rigorous, and engaging instruction, that they're receiving individualized, equitable, and inclusive supports, meaning that they're getting the support that they need to be successful, and included to the most degree possible in the general education setting. That they have access to diverse course offerings, athletics, and activities, things that excite them and engage them and want them to participate in school, and that all of our students are making progress, annual growth, and meeting grade level standards. And it's really that last point that we're focusing on tonight. We do have a target that 85% of our students overall are meeting those growth and proficiency targets. And we have very specific growth and proficiency targets for each grade. So I want to just highlight a couple of things in terms of those proficiency targets by grade, and highlight where people can find those on our website, and then also review our performance indicator reporting calendar, because we have these reports on a regular annual calendar to the board. So first, we look at both growth and proficiency when we're talking about student academic progress and success. So the growth targets that we set help us answer the question, are students making academic growth and progress? Growth is really important because we have students come to us with all different skill levels, all different needs and experiences. So all of our students don't come to us the same. And so we want to really focus on growth, and that's a measure that helps us look at ourselves as a district to say, is the instruction that we're providing to students in our classrooms, is it helping them grow? They might not all come in at the same level, but are we helping them grow throughout the year and from year to year? And then we also look at proficiency targets. So there are grade level standards at every grade, and we want our students to be meeting those grade level standards. Again, some students come to us maybe being well below standard, and so they've got a ways to grow, and some students come right at meeting standard. So we focus on growth and also proficiency, because ultimately we want all students to be meeting grade level standards and then ultimately graduate. We have really specific growth and proficiency targets. These are alluded to in our strategic plan, but there's a companion document, and I've got some screenshots here that's right on our website that shows grade by grade what we are focusing on in terms of early literacy, reading, language arts, English language acquisition for our English learners, math, science, and then in the later grades, whether students are on track for graduation, whether they're earning passing grades, whether they're earning dual credit in preparation for post-secondary, and ultimately are they graduating prepared for their post-secondary pathway. So as you can see, we've got these color-coded by grade level, every single grade. We'll just stop on 5th grade for a moment. You can see that we've got growth targets that we use the MAP assessment to measure growth, spring to spring annual growth. Also, we look at the state assessment, the SBA, and we look at our students progressing from level 1 to level 2, level 2 to 3, 3 to 4 in both reading and math. And then we look at proficiency using the MAP data for the elementary grades up to grade 5, and then we focus on the standards-based assessment, the state assessment for grade 5 and above. So we've got them again for every single grade level, all throughout elementary, middle, and high school up through to senior year. And we've got our reports on an annual calendar. So you might recall that in the month of September, we come to you with the Smarter Balanced Assessment, the state assessment data, and the WIDA. That's used to be the ELPA. That's the English Language Proficiency Assessment. Now it's called the WIDA. And we also present the DIBELS data at that time in September. In October, we're focusing on our 8th grade algebra data, credit accumulation, dual credit, and graduation rates. And then May, we're focusing on MAP, reading and math. So that's what you're going to see tonight. The MAP assessment, there's a reading and a math. And this slide shows you what those focus on. So on the reading side, it's the focus on key ideas and details of literary texts, also language, craft, and structure, vocabulary and informational texts, key ideas and details. And then on the MAP side, it's a little different for grades 2 through 5 and grades 6 and up, but you can see it's operations and algebraic thinking, number and operations, measurement and data, geometry, statistics and probability at those upper grades. So those are the skills and knowledge that are being assessed through the MAP assessment. We've had a really interesting couple of years, as we all know, and that has affected state assessments and our assessment calendar and all those kind of things. So I just want to remind you that last year in May, what we were able to present, given all of the issues with COVID and assessment, we were able to present fall 20 to spring 21 growth, so fall to spring instead of spring to spring because there was not a spring assessment. We were able to look at winter to spring growth at the middle school, and then student proficiency based on the spring 2021 assessment. So that was kind of a different year. This year, we're really back on our normal track when it comes to our assessment calendar. So you're going to see elementary school spring 21 to spring 22 growth data, both for reading and math. You're going to see that for middle school as well. And then proficiency as measured by the spring 2022 reading and math MAP assessments. You won't see 5th grade when we get to proficiency because that's when we make the switch to looking at the state assessment as our proficiency measure. So with that, just a little bit of an introduction. I'm going to hand it over to Matt, and he's going to present the math and reading growth and proficiency data.
Can I ask real quick, sorry, you stated 3 tests, so we do SBA, DIBELS, and MAP testing. Is that all state required testing?
No, actually, and there's probably a few more in there. So what we do is, we do some district level testing, primarily around early reading acquisition, and that's DIBELS. And it's aligned with also state reporting around dyslexia screening. So that's really informing our work instructionally with early literacy when we use DIBELS. And then we also use as a district MAP testing for math and for reading. And then the state testing we do is for the WIDA, which is our language acquisition testing, and then the Smarter Balanced Assessment. So there's kind of a continuum of the assessments we give for a variety of purposes.
No, thank you. I just, in my mind, like, that seems like a ton of testing, and I can only imagine how long our kids are just taking these tests. I know it's for assessments and to move forward, but sure, it just seems like they're testing a ton.
So one of the reasons that we moved to doing a spring to spring MAP assessment is precisely that, because we felt like we could get the same growth, and it was also kind of at the end of the year when students had attained kind of a lot of instruction, and we could compare those 2 times versus coming back in the fall and taking the test and then taking it again in the spring. We certainly test new students to the district so we can get a sense of where they're at, but that we have done some things with our assessment system to try to address the amount of time that we're testing. But I'd also comment and just say that we can't look at these tests as being something separate from instruction. We need to be really looking at them as a part and an integral part of our instruction, in that, how are we assessing whether or not students are learning from our instruction without doing that. So part of it is also aligning that instruction and make that assessment meaningful and not make it a something that's standing aside and separate from instruction. And so, but your concern is a concern that we've had, frequently voiced to us by educators, as well as how much time are we setting aside for testing versus the instruction. So I'll start tonight with elementary data. So again, as Dr. Pierce mentioned, we look at two things that are elementary with our MAP testing. We just completed MAP testing here on Monday, so these are preliminary results based on that. We look at our growth data and we look at our proficiency data. Our growth data is for students in 3rd through 5th grade. And so this chart is just simply kind of showing a comparison. And as Dr. Pierce said, it's been a crazy 3 years. We have not had a consistent system of assessment in the 3 years that I've been in my position over assessment. So it's been really interesting as we move through this. By way of comparison, the spring 18 to spring 2019, that was the last time previous to this last spring that we had given a spring test. So we needed to compare spring 2018 to spring 2019. And as Dr. Pierce alluded to, in fall, we did fall to spring growth last year just to give us a measure. And then now we're back to the spring to spring. So what we really want to look at in this chart is kind of comparing the pre and post in terms of school closures and disruption due to COVID. And so you'll see that at the 3rd grade level, we had about 70% of our students make that their expected growth spring to spring at 3rd grade. That dropped last year, and then it's come back a little bit, but not up to the level where it was pre-COVID. However, at our 4th grade and our 5th grade, particularly at 4th grade, we've rebounded, fairly nicely in regards to that over the last couple of years. 5th grade, we're right about where we were previous to COVID in regards to the number of students who are making their expected spring to spring growth. Not where we'd want it to be, but again, given the fact that we've been in that COVID situation, now we feel we have a good baseline score to work from.
Can I ask a quick question on that last one? So when you have, the 3rd graders, these are, and then you go to the next year, these are like 2nd graders from the year before and 1st graders from the year before that, right?
Right.
So really what this shows is that the younger the kids are, the more they struggled, right? Am I reading that right? Is that kind of what I can conclude?
I don't think you can conclude that. I think we're looking here is cohort group, compare cohort group to cohort group. So you're going to have unique situations in each of those cohort groups. And so you might have some variability. However, what we really are looking for is the rate of students making their expected growth increasing from year to year due to the instructional changes. So it's not necessarily what it does indicate as you look across the grade levels there's some grade levels where students do tend to do better based on the length of their educational experience in certain ways. But I think that at least in this chart, it's just comparing cohort to cohort group moving through. So then we look at individual school scores, and so we've highlighted this year so that it's easy to see as we stand out. And this may go a little bit more to that question, Ms. Valentine, on that. But so the highlighted is this year, and this is again the percentage at each school of the students who were making expected spring to spring growth. And so again, what we see across our 3rd grade is every single school has increased the number of students who made their spring to spring growth over last year, and we would expect that given the disruptions to school. But one way to look at this also, and I'll try to use the cursor to kind of illustrate it. So if you look at, say, for example, Amon Creek, the students here in grade 3 in 2021, those are the students that we're reporting now in 4th grade in 21-22. So one way to look at this is also to say, okay, last year at Amon Creek, 51% of the 3rd graders made growth. And of those similar, they're not the exact same kids group moving year to year, but this year they had 69% of their 4th graders meeting growth. And similarly, when you look at the move from 4th grade to 5th grade. So that's another way to look at this data to kind of compare groups of kids a little bit more than just cohort groups. So the columns indicate the cohort groups and moving across, you can kind of see what they did as they moved up in grade level. So again, what we've seen is increases this year over last year, which we would sincerely hope to see because of the disruption to school that students had. But we also see that, we have some schools that are struggling a little bit more with that than others, and we need to be working with them to see what we can do to address that. When we look at our proficiency data, this is the percentage of students that are hitting at a certain score on our MAP test or above. So in this case, it's the percentage of students who are at or above the 60th percentile. The reason we use the 60th percentile for math reading is because that's a score that correlates pretty closely to whether or not they'll be successful in passing at a level 3 or 4 of the Smarter Balanced Assessment. So there's some correlation there, so that we want to have our targets be kind of similar, even though we're using 2 different measures. So when we look at this, the percentage, and this is a pretty audacious goal, to be honest. I mean, to have 65% of our students above the 60th percentile is going to, it's a real strong growth goal for us. So what we look at is the spring of 2019, the year prior to COVID, we had about 44% of our second graders, 58% of our third graders, and 45% of our fourth graders who met that. We had a little bit of a dip in spring of 2021, and then in looking at spring of 2022, we haven't quite got back to where we were prior to COVID. And I think that also echoes what we hear from teachers, what we hear from parents, that, our students have, they've struggled to regain what they lost during that time. And so I think that just bears that out. But again, it gives us that good baseline to continue to move forward. Again, this is the breakdown of those students at each school, the percentage of students that were at or above the 60th percentile. And we see variability at schools. We also, though, can look and doing that same type of comparison, again, using Amon Creek as an example, because they're towards the top of the list. Last year we had 60% of our second graders meet the standard. This year's third grade, 68%. So again, that's another way of looking at it, to just say, are those students attaining proficiency? Again, lots of numbers here to go through. For the most part, we didn't see as much growth from year to year on the proficiency measures as we did on the growth. But again, I think that kind of echoes a lot of what we see with the effects of COVID and school disruption. When we also look then at math at the elementary level, we do the same thing. We look at growth data and we look at proficiency data. So again, looking at our growth data, in math, one of the highlights is, again, I think if you look at pre-COVID and now this year, we see increases at each of those grade levels in terms of the percentage of students who met their growth, which I think is really strong and a really good testament to the work that's being done in our classrooms. When we look at, again, our growth data, we see increases from last year to this year in terms of the percentage of students growing. However, interestingly, with math, we don't necessarily see, and I'll pick on Amon Creek again, what we saw with the reading scores and the reading proficiency. So again, last year at grade 3, we had 77% of our students meet proficiency, and this year at grade 4, 61%. So we see a little bit of a difference there with our math instruction and our math outcomes that we want to look a little bit more closely at. When we look at our district math proficiency data at elementary, the percentile rank that we look at, or the percentile target we look at with this one's a little bit higher. Again, it correlates with Smarter Balanced Assessment, so it requires a little bit higher attainment in terms of math, but we want to try to get 65% or more of our students above the 7th percentile, and this kind of shows where we are at with the district. Pre-COVID, 27, 30, and 23. Post-COVID, 27, 25, and 23. So we kind of come back a little bit to that point, a little bit lower in third grade. But again, we've increased over last year, which again, we would hope that would be the case. As we look here at the individual scores, again, you will kind of see, again, with just our proficiency data, you will see a little bit of that growth from year to year that I pointed out with reading with this, again, using Amon Creek as an example. Actually, they had 43% of their second graders. This year, they had 59% of their third graders, and you see that that's a fairly consistent trend with a few exceptions. So again, interesting data for us to begin working with our principals on. Moving on to middle school, we do the same thing in middle school, but in middle school, we're only focused on growth. Because we're using the Smarter Balanced Assessment as our proficiency target for those students. And so when we look here, again, just kind of comparing similarly, we have, our 6th grade has increased the percentage of students meeting growth. Our 7th grade dropped a little bit over the last couple of years, and our 5th grade dropped a little bit as well. So when we look at kind of school by school, again, we see that, interestingly, a little bit at some schools, their percentage was lower pre-COVID than it was actually after a couple of years. So again, good work going on at those schools in terms of meeting students' needs. But then again, just kind of comparing across the board where we're at, seeing that in some cohort groups, that, for example, 7th grade, that we haven't quite got back to where we were previous to COVID. When we look at our math data, we're really looking again at that. This is district growth for math. So we had previous to COVID, we had 31% of our 6th graders who were making their expected growth. This last spring, 54%. Previous to COVID, 60 and 63 for 7th and 8th grade, and we haven't quite got back there. Those are slight increase at 7th grade over last year, slight decrease at 8th grade. And then there's the individual school breakdowns as well, again for the growth. And so I think that there's areas that are very positive in regards to even prior to COVID when we're looking at numbers, in particular our 6th grade. We're seeing some pretty significant increases in the percentage of growth. And again, you can do kind of the same math as you work through. Some places we saw decreases from 6th to 7th grade, and from 7th to 8th grade, some places we saw increases. And so again, this provides us some good baseline data to move forward. So the question always will come, okay, so what are we going to be doing with this data? So it's really important, I think, to understand that we're constantly working towards improvement of the student outcomes. And again, not to beat the dead horse, but certainly we've had disruptions over the last couple of years that haven't only disrupted things for students, they've also disrupted things for teachers. And teachers have had to switch and try to do some things. And what we're really striking the chord around the curriculum department is really how do we refocus our teachers back on our curriculum, the adopted curriculum, and systems of instruction. So we're going to continue to be evaluating and reviewing our core curriculum and our instruction throughout our schools, continuing to implement our new curriculum at 6 through 12, particularly in ELA. One thing I didn't mention on looking at the scores is also, we always know when we're implementing new things that there's always going to be an implementation dip, which is perfectly normal, and research bears out that will happen. So that can also be part of the root cause when we're looking at some of those things with our middle schoolers. Continue to align our learning standards and our outcomes of instruction, which is kind of what I was speaking to earlier in terms of the assessment. Is the assessment, is our teaching matching the skills that are assessed for students, and then allocating resources to buildings to address learning needs. I'll talk a little bit more about that. And then again, all of our buildings engage in school improvement planning, and they analyze both this data that we're providing plus the additional data we'll be reporting on next fall. They develop interventions, they align their goals for growth and proficiency targets, and then they're really working on implementing, kind of learning recovery in a lot of ways. And so there's a lot of things that the schools work on: social emotional learning, multi-tiered systems of support, positive behavior intervention systems, our partnerships, particularly with communities and schools and others, to provide supports for families and students, and then providing ongoing professional development and support for our teachers and principals and how they can meet those needs. I mentioned really quickly about multi-tiered systems of support, and I just wanted to explain more about what we really are talking about with that. So when we look at multi-tiered systems of support, we really are looking at our system in terms of, we have kind of a tier 1, or our first level, or our core instruction that we provide all of our students. And so we want that to be a real healthy way for us to meet the needs. And it usually will meet the needs of about 80% of our students. And they will benefit from that, and they won't need any further intervention. At tier 2, we really are looking for the students who maybe need a little bit more intervention. We target some interventions to students, again, really around criteria, progress monitoring, what is the explicit instruction we're doing to meet the needs of those individual students. And that's really another layer that some students receive based on their needs. And usually it's about, 15%, 10 to 15% of our students, 15 to 20% of our students who receive that. And then when we talk about our tier 3 systems of support, those are our students who really have significant needs and are at significant risk of not responding either to the tier 1, our core instruction, or even our interventions. And so our goal is for all of our schools to be developing multi-tiered systems of support to meet the needs of all their students in all of the realms, in behavioral, in academic, and also social and emotionally, to meet the needs that we know exist based on the disruption to schools that they've had. So just really quickly on our performance summary, this is just going back to what Dr. Pierce shared in the very beginning. This year, preliminarily, we think that we have about 56% of our students testing, making expected spring to spring growth in MAP reading, and about 60% of students making that growth in math assessment at our elementaries. We also think we have about 40% of our elementary students testing at a proficiency level in math or MAP reading, and about 25% testing at proficiency level in math. And then at middle school, we have 51% of students testing making growth in reading and 54% making growth in MAP. With that, I entertain any comments or questions.
A lot of information, thank you. Micah, have any questions?
No, I don't, thank you.
Diane? Perfect. Mr. Mabry?
No, thanks.
Wonderful. Matt, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Lots of good information. Okay, next on the agenda is unfinished business, which there is none. So next is new business. Mr. Scott doesn't get to move. We're going to talk about the comprehensive sexual health education adoption recommendation.
Okay, so tonight I'm bringing to you a recommendation for board approval in regards to our health 612 health education curriculum, which also is including comprehensive sexual health education. Again, this is connected. We like to connect everything to our strategic plan. And so again, this is connected to our engaged learners goal. And one of our objectives for this year was adopting, we said 4 through 12 comprehensive sex health. It turned out to be 6 through 12, 4th and 5th grade, as I mentioned in the previous board report, are really taken care of through what we currently offer. Just by way of reminder, the requirement to provide comprehensive sex health is found in Senate Bill 5395, which passed the legislature and voters in 2020. What that bill did was require all schools to provide comprehensive sex health education, and they'll be phased in beginning in 21-22. Grades K through 3 are to receive instruction in social emotional learning beginning in 22-23. But there is no sexual health content required, as I've mentioned before, for students in grades K through 3, and that the bill also maintains the right for parents and guardians to opt their children out of sexual health education instruction. I came to you in March to give you an update in regards to where we were at with the process and to provide you an opportunity to ask questions in regards to kind of the why we're going through this. I provided you an update on the process. We presented information to you at that time about the committee's work around the learning standards, the core ideas, the topics, and the outcomes that we wanted to achieve through our curriculum. I reviewed with you also the rights of parents and guardians, and we reviewed the curriculum adoption process and what we had been working on. At that time, I mentioned to you that we did have a really robust health adoption committee and process. We selected out of 107 applicants, about 25 parents or community members. And of those 25, 15 were pretty consistently involved in the meetings and in the processes. Some dropped in and dropped out of that. But we also included, in addition to the parents, we had teachers and also our nurses who were part of the curriculum adoption so that we could address the need for medically accurate curriculum. I also have reviewed in the past, but wanted to review today, just also the health standards, and these are the standards for the state of Washington in regards to health instruction. So you'll notice that there are several health standards that are indicated here in terms of, we have a total of 8. And again, none of these necessarily focus solely on comprehensive sexual health. They are intertwined within them. But within the bill that was passed, the required instruction around comprehensive sexual health is outlined on this slide. So there are some things that we are required to do as part of providing this. So part of it is, are we providing physiologically, psychological, and sociological developmental processes experienced by an individual? Are we talking about the development of interpersonal and intrapersonal skills around communication to reduce health risks and choose healthy behaviors? Is there instruction about health care and prevention resources, abstinence and other methods of preventing unintended pregnancy and sexually transmitted diseases, development of meaningful relationships and avoidance of exploitative relationships, understanding the influences of family, peers, community, and the media throughout life, on healthy sexual relationships, and then affirmative consent and recognizing and responding safely and effectively when a risk of violence may be present, along with strategies which include how you would interact as a bystander. So these are the required standards that need to be taught. And as I mentioned to you in that board report in March, the committee looked at, had some flexibility in looking at the core ideas and the topics that would be addressed. So the standards need to be addressed, but how we address them and the topics we choose to discuss were up to the committee. And so I shared with you at that time that there were some things that the committee determined would not be necessarily appropriate, or that they didn't feel would be appropriate in health instruction. And that was mainly around self-identity. And then we went a little bit deeper into this, but I won't do that tonight because we did it in March. Again, just the health adoption committee process in the fall. We spent time reviewing those health standards, the core ideas, the topics, the grade level outcomes, making some decisions in that way. We also reviewed sample lessons, materials of various curriculum. In winter to spring, that's when the committee really explored 4 different curricular options for health instruction. And then they narrowed it to 2. We had publisher presentations, and then they selected their final recommendation for the board at that time. The selection criteria, the things that really stood out in regards to, the needs for health curriculum were really that obviously that we wanted the instructional materials to align to state health learning standards because that's a requirement. We wanted the resource to contain medically accurate factual information. We wanted the sexual health education lessons to be separate from the general health lessons because we're not teaching comprehensive sex health at every grade level. We're not required to teach it at every grade level, and so I think it was really important to separate that out. We wanted alternative lessons for students, available for students who would opt out of the sexual health education. We wanted district control over the content. So we weren't just handing students textbooks that had the content in it and asked them not to look at it. We want to be able to control that to a certain degree. We also wanted to be able to integrate it with our learning management system, and we also valued family engagement components because we realized that there's a great deal of this education just around health, not necessarily even the contents of sex health, that is important for families to engage in and really should be there for them. And then also wanted obviously engaging curriculum. So the recommendation that the committee came to us with was really to recommend adoption of essential health skills for middle school and essential health skills for high school, which is published by Goodhart Wilcox Publishers. Some of the rationale is listed here on this slide. I won't read through every piece of it, but it does indicate that that the committee found it to be engaging, visually interesting, that there were good instructional tools, that there was a good family engagement, that it did work really well with our learning management platform, and that there were materials for students that opted out, and that those alternate health lessons would be meaningful activities for students. We held a curriculum preview, in-person preview meeting on the evening of May 4th. We had a few 40 or more people attend that in person, another 40 or 50 viewed it at that time online. And since the presentation, I checked today, the video's been viewed 256 times. I wouldn't really call that going viral. I guess I haven't gone viral yet, which is maybe a good thing. We also offered a feedback form link as part of that, both at the in-person as well as a link to the curriculum so that people could go in and see all of it. And again, just to point out, and I tried to do that at the presentation, is like, just because you're seeing all of the curriculum, that isn't all the curriculum that the students will see. It's just the complete curriculum, and then we're going to make some decisions based on those topics. So we offered a feedback form as well. There's a lengthy quote here from parent feedback, and these were from some committee members or a committee member. And they felt like, there were some real good, strong highlights that they felt made this curriculum better than the others that we looked at. Primarily, they felt that, the ability to release the human sexuality supplement only to those students who needed it and not to have it available to everybody was really strong. And again, there's several other comments here that were really positive. Teacher, or I guess additional parent feedback, they felt like, that there was the materials being covered in very factual ways, that they'd be comfortable with the child attending the class. They found it really pretty interesting and cool that they could that the opt-out assignments would be ready to go for students who are opting out of certain sections, and it was a good option for middle school and high school curriculum. Teachers thought that they found something that provided them great tools. They liked it, they want to get in there and they want to explore it, and they want to be able to use it in the way that it's intended to be used. I also wanted to comment briefly on another segment of our population that we also included in this process, and that was our students who are our special education students who are in mainly our self-contained classrooms, our tier 3 students who are middle school and high school age, who need access to gen ed, who also need to learn about their selves, how they care for themselves, health and understanding of their body, and also relationship development, but for whom the developmental level may not be appropriate for our gen ed curriculum. And so we did convene a subcommittee to look at some curriculum for those particular students. And so they have recommended the Healthy Relationships curriculum, a guide to adulthood. And they felt like that was a really strong piece. They liked the program. They felt like it was very individualized because we have lots of students in those classrooms who are lots of different levels and have lots of different needs. They felt this would be something that they could really individualize well with, and that the videos were really, and the videos and the discussion materials were very appropriate, and that there was lots of supportive material for students. One parent said that they were impressed with it. They liked the scope and sequence, the design, the flow. They thought that the curriculum was engaging, and that the videos and pictures, they really liked to use real people and not just cartoons. It was much more realistic, and they felt that was really strong. I mentioned that curriculum, not because I'm going to be asking you to adopt it tonight. We have not gone through a 10-day preview period with that curriculum. But we do need to get that on a consent agenda in the future, and I wanted you to be able to know that there had been a process with it, so when it comes up on the consent agenda, you know that it had gone through that. But we're not going to be recommending that tonight because we still have one more piece to complete. When I did the parent preview night, the feedback that we had lots of great questions, and I felt like, and I hope that it was shared by the part of the community members who attended, and I know a couple of board members were able to go. You know, that it was we really wanted to indicate to parents the transparency of the process, the transparency even moving forward. And we didn't have a lot of concerns about the curriculum at all, but what we really did have a lot of concerns about was more process and what happens now, particularly around the process for opting out, how parents will be informed when the instruction is going to be happening, when will this instruction be happening, at what grade levels, how will students have access to materials if they opt out, what experience are they going to get when they do? What happens if teachers aren't teaching the board-approved curriculum? What happens if, you know, a teacher says, you know, we have a board policy about teaching controversial topics, and can I use that policy to teach something outside of the adopted curriculum? And then there were some questions about, you know, students maybe being stigmatized by opting out. How are we going to handle that in a way that's respectful for all students? And those were really the questions that came in terms of kind of some themes. Some of those I had answers for, and some of those we just don't at this point in time. Number one, we need to get the curriculum. We need to know what's approved so we can get it, so that then we can do the planning processes around which topics are covered at 6th, 7th, and 8th grade, so that we can make a determination, is it going to be at 6th grade and 8th grade, 7th and 8th grade, where we're going to spend a unit of study, how many days that might be, when will that fall in the school year. But when we go through that process, then we will continue to have it be a transparent one with a presence on our curriculum page. We also, in terms of the opting out procedure, you know, this is still to be worked out, but what we don't want to do is we don't want to leave that to individual teachers to manage. We don't want to leave it to individual buildings to manage. It needs to be a district-led process. And so one of the to-dos waiting on the incoming assistant superintendent for K-12 is to help schools figure out, because we have a lot of our schools that teach health in many different ways in terms of how they structure their health instruction. And so we've got a lot of work to do in regards to that. But I think that these questions that teachers or that parents asked, we addressed a little bit with you last board meeting when you adopted the process on the policy around comprehensive sex health curriculum. And we very clearly have indicated that teachers will teach the board approved curriculum. So we've set the boundaries for our instructional staff very clearly with that. And we'll be working with them through professional development, through the planning of the curriculum, to make sure that there's a good understanding of the sensitivity and of the need to follow through with what we have indicated we need to do through the curriculum. So more on this to come, but those were really the questions that came out of that feedback. So what we're recommending tonight is essential health skills for middle school for grades 6 through 8, essential health skills for high school grades 9 through 12, and then we'll bring healthy relationships back on consent agenda once we've completed the process.
Wonderful, thank you. Questions, anyone?
It's not really a question, Matt, and I just want to say, I actually have been impressed that I feel like it has been a pretty transparent process, at least for me, and I appreciate, and I know that it's a sensitive topic, so I feel like it needed to be, and these questions on, slide 188, which is two, they passed, those are really, really good questions, and I know the answer, but I just want to I'm really not asking for you, but I'm sort of just stating to the community, in a sense that anybody can opt out, and they can opt out very easily and with no resistance, that there is not any medically kind of guessing, nothing that's going to be gender identification, none of that kind of stuff is going to be taught, that nothing's being taught from kinder to third, right? The teachers, and I maybe might want to just briefly say this out loud, teachers who do teach outside the curriculum, kind of, I know we hope that doesn't happen, and we think that's not going to happen. Obviously, it could happen, but can you just maybe spend 10 seconds on just that? If that does happen, how do you prevent that a little bit?
Sure. We've had situations where we've had to address instructional issues with teachers around curricular choices, and we have a process for going through and doing that. So certainly, the first step is in really good training and making sure that people understand this is what we teach and that there is no then the other piece about it is, principals. So one of the things I'm going to be asking our principals to do as we implement this is to spend some time in the classroom during this instruction so that they can see it. And so there's going to be a few things that we're going to be doing to better ensure that that's going to happen, but we do have processes in place when it does.
Yeah, and I doubt this is going to happen because it'd be extremely embarrassing for the kid, but parents would be welcome to watch or be in that class. Like I said, I doubt that happened. It'd be really embarrassing probably for the kids more than anything. And then the last thing, sorry, thank you for this. I just feel like it's important for the community and I just don't want any confusion. You mentioned that it's not required to teach to all ages. And I just want to just ask you, are we teaching it to an age that's not required? Or are we only teaching it to the required ages?
Yeah, so the requirement is it needs to be taught 2 times during the course of grades 6 through 8. And so I think I alluded to in the presentation and also maybe to the board report that there's not really a definition of times. It's not like but we have, I believe, and Lori Butler is in the audience. I always forget to thank my supporter for this, but she really led the process. But I think there's 2 chapters, correct, Lori, that are in the 6 through 8 curriculum and 2 chapters in the 9 through 12. Yeah. So there's 2 chapters for the entire grade, those grade spans.
Have to be taught.
And so we're going to pick out some lessons from those chapters and then make a determination, is it going to be taught at 6th grade or 8th grade, 7th grade or 8th grade, depending on what's really developmentally appropriate, and then determine when it's going to be taught, for how long. It's probably going to be, 2 or 3 days of lessons.
Yeah. So we've formed committees. We've had multiple sessions. We've sent out surveys. We've had in-house here where we invited parents to come. We've talked about it. I hope that I've asked all the questions. You have most of the questions up there anyway. I hope that most people are feeling they trust this and they're okay with this and they felt like that we did them right in this occasion and it'll be a positive step for a levy in February.
Well, and I don't want to risk anything by saying it. We've had people ask questions and we've addressed those questions. We have not had people come and say, we don't agree with this curriculum. We don't want this curriculum to be taught. You may not want your child to experience it, which is perfectly fine under the law, but we haven't. I mean, again, most of the questions in that presentation have been around process, not necessarily the what we're teaching. So yeah.
Any comments?
Neighbor? Yes, I have a comment. And I just wanted to stress that this is the type of rigor that we go through all curriculum changes. Is that fair to say?
I would say this is the process we take all of our curriculum through. I would say that we've been extremely transparent with this piece just because of the sensitivity of it. But we've also, since we started doing this, incorporated students. I think I mentioned it last board meeting about our world language, incorporating parents in those selection teams, not just asking them to give feedback over a selection, but having them be part of that. And we anticipate that moving forward.
Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. So you need a recommendation from us. So I would entertain a motion.
You need first and second or first?
I don't know, this is a,
Does it just need recommendation, or does it need first or second, or how does that?
Just it doesn't need a first or second. I mean, just a recommendation. Matt's made the recommendation, so now we just need a motion.
I move that we accept Health Committee's recommendation to adopt essential health skills for middle school and high school as presented.
perfect. I need a second for that. Yes. You want a second?
I guess I second. Am I the only one?
Well, Ron can do it, I can do
Ron.
it. Yeah, we've got first and second. Any other comments or questions? If none, Patty, I'll call for the roll call vote, please.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Ms. Dundas?
Yes.
Mr. Mabry?
Yes.
Mr. Connors?
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Next on the agenda is policy 3290, student social and emotional climate, first reading. Dr. Pierce will present.
Okay. Sorry. Getting ahead of myself here. Okay. So you've heard the term social emotional learning a few times this evening in the context of the presentation that Matt just gave, and also when in the previous presentation when we were talking about MTSS, multi-tiered systems of support, which is about really looking at social emotional learning, academic needs and behavioral needs, and ensuring that there's systems to support students. So social emotional learning is not something new that schools haven't been tending to, because we know our students are little human beings. And in addition to academic needs and behavior needs, they have emotions. They need to learn how to manage themselves and also how to interact appropriately with others. And so social emotional learning has kind of, the importance of it, I think, has been elevated in recent years, especially maybe with COVID, as that has taken its toll on people in multiple different ways. And so schools need to be paying attention not only to the academic needs of students, not only to the behavior needs of students, but also to students' social emotional needs and learning. And so there is a policy that I'm bringing before the board tonight that really encapsulates what we're already doing, and we're required to have this policy. So just a little bit of background information. Every year, we are required to submit what's called a Basic Ed Compliance Report to the State Board of Education. And then we get a statement back telling us whether we're in compliance or not. And the board will recall, likely when we got our report back last time, we were told there's two areas where we're out of compliance. One was we don't have a standalone civics course, which was just a matter of kind of rearranging some things because our civics is part of a year-long course. So that was a pretty surface level change we were able to make to be able to get into compliance. The other area where we were out of compliance is we don't have this social emotional learning policy. So I want to just reference for you where this comes from. There's RCW here that is a law. As we all know, RCWs are laws. And the legislature directed WASDA, the School Directors Association, to develop a model policy and procedure for social emotional school and classroom climate. And it goes on and kind of specifies what the goal is, ensuring support for students and so forth and so on, kind of a lot of words here. And as I scroll to the bottom, it says by the beginning of the 21-22 school year, each school district must adopt or amend necessary policies and procedures that at a minimum incorporate all the elements of the WASDA model policy for social emotional learning. So that's the piece that we just don't have documented. It's not that we haven't been paying attention to social emotional learning. Schools have programs like Character Strong and different ways of supporting students and helping students to kind of learn those life skills. And I'll go over what those are specifically in just a moment. We just didn't have the policy adopted. So that's why the state board noted that we were out of compliance there. So before I get to just the wording of the policy, I want to bring up what is social emotional learning, how is it defined, and what are those standards? So in the model policy, it references the Washington K-12 social emotional standards and benchmarks. And you'll recall from Matt's presentation, it said we're teaching social emotional learning at K-3 as part of that comprehensive health. So really social emotional learning is about self, and there's a self part and a social part. And there's 6 standards. There's 3 standards that are connected to self and 3 standards that are connected to social. So the 3 self standards are self-awareness, identifying your emotions, managing your emotions, those types of things. Self-management, again, regulating emotions and behavior. And then self-efficacy, motivating themselves, persevere, and see themselves as capable, which is something that's interesting Mr. Valentine brought up earlier in the context of visiting legacy, right? We want all students to see themselves as capable, and we want to help them learn how to overcome setbacks and learn from failure and regulate their emotions and not take their emotions out on other people, bullying and those kinds of things. So there's a whole self kind of management part of social emotional learning. And then the other part of it is about social interactions. So social awareness, can you empathize and see the perspective of other people and basically get along with people and realize that people are different. And, you know, Mr. Mabry brought up an incident, right, that we're all aware of that happened at one of our high schools. It was an isolated incident, and I don't believe reflective of the overall student body for our district, not to minimize it at all. Even one isolated incident is not okay. It's not acceptable. And we need to address those things both from a disciplinary point of view and also from a learning point of view, not only in repairing the harm that was caused by that, but also helping those students really understand why that action was not okay. And that's part of social awareness and understanding that we live in a diverse society. People have different viewpoints and perspectives and lived experiences, and we need to be able to get along and respect one another. And so I just bring that up because I think it is so important and not something that isn't important. Social management, make safe and constructed choices about personal behavior and social interactions, and then social engagement. Really considering others and showing a desire to contribute to the well-being of school and community, which we've talked a lot about tonight. So social emotional learning, it's sometimes I think people get confused, what is it? And when we're not really clear about what it is, people think it's something that it's not, and this is what it is. So the policy tonight is simply to bring us into compliance. And I think it presented a great opportunity to talk about, we throw these terms around a lot in education, social emotional learning, and we don't always take the time of really explaining them and what they are. So the policy itself basically reinforces that our goal is to create, maintain, and nurture physically, emotionally, and intellectually safe, respectful, and positive school and classroom environments that foster equitable, ethical, social, emotional, and academic education for all students. And then it goes on, I know you've seen this, it's in the board packet. It says that we have a planning process for this. This is part of our student survey each year, getting some information that helps inform how can we better serve and support our students. And then it says it's aligned to those Washington State Social Emotional Learning Standards, which are those 6 standards that I just showed you. So recommendation is to adopt the policy this evening.
Wonderful, thank you. Anyone have any questions or comments? If not, I will entertain a motion to accept this for first reading, first and second.
Go ahead, Diane, you got this.
I thought you were going to go. So I would recommend that we accept Board Policy 3290, Social Emotional Climate, for first and second reading.
I have a second. I'll be happy to second if you're concerned.
I'll second. I'll just give Ron a chance.
Perfect.
Or you.
Any further comments or questions? If not, I will call for the roll call vote, please.
Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Ms. Sunovich?
Yes.
Mr. Mabry?
Yes.
And Mr. Connors?
Yes. Thank you. Okay, next is policy 3308, students and personal electronic devices for first reading.
Okay, so this policy is modeled after policy from another school district. We don't currently have a very clear policy about what is allowed and what isn't allowed when it comes to personal electronic devices. And so we have had some issues of recording happening that, a student recording another student and that student wasn't aware of it and didn't want to be recorded. And while there is law that says if you're in a public setting, like we're in a public setting right now, there's a reasonable expectation of being recorded. I mean, now we're recording anyway and broadcasting that, but people can come here with cell phones and take pictures and record, and there's a reasonable expectation that that can happen because we're in a public setting. While public schools are public, when you're inside this school during school hours, it's not considered legally a public setting. We just don't allow anybody to wander into our schools and do what they want. Now, public settings are, if you're at an athletic event, that's open to the public, people can come, and so that's a different thing. But when school is in session and school is occurring, it's not public. We want to ensure, again, safety, privacy. We want to make sure that students aren't using cell phones to record things and bully one another. We need to be clear with students what those lines are. We also recognize that, cell phones are just part of life. Everybody has a cell phone pretty much. It's not about restricting having students have those cell phones or those devices because we know they're going to have them, but it's about ensuring that they're using them appropriately. And so what this policy specifies is that really, cell phones like during class time it's really up to the individual teacher, and that's reflective of what happens currently, whether or not cell phones can be used. But there's some specific prohibited use of those phones. And that's really to use them to bully or discriminate against others or to do essentially bad things with your phone. And so we've got all of that prohibited use. Both, you can't, and there is law in Washington that it requires two-party consent of a recording. So if you're sitting down in a meeting with somebody, for example, there has to be consent. You can't secretly record people in our state. So this also aligns with that. And our whole goal here, again, is student safety, protecting our students, ensuring that our school environments are safe for staff and students, and that we're helping teach students how to use all of these electronic devices responsibly. So there's a lot of information here. That's kind of the high level of it, and I know you've had a chance to look at it in your board packet. So we're recommending that the board adopt this policy this evening.
So I have a question on students not being able to use hotspots, because I'll be perfectly honest, that's something I've done throughout this year, and that is Part D under prohibited use. And kind of, I don't understand the negative side to that. Like if I'm in class and I can do work because the internet's down or whatnot.
And we processed this in cabinet, and I want to make sure, I wanted to check with Mr. Cohn. But I'm not, it looks like he stepped out of the room and now he's back. Mr. Cohn, would you, there's a question about hotspot functionality as part of the policy that we're presenting tonight on cell phone use and so forth. So the question Zach had is this part here where it says students may not enable portable hotspot functionality or tether a district-owned computer to a cell phone. And so I guess two things I want to check. Is that something that we that is reflective of current practice that we don't that we prohibit it now, and or like why is that? And I'm putting you on the spot a little bit, but.
All right.
And if we need to go back and look into it further, that's fine too.
Okay, so I'm unsure if it's a district-owned Chromebook or iPad. If you attach, no matter what internet source you attach to, we filter your internet content. So we do issue hotspots. They have some restrictions, more restrictions on them, just that they control who can attach to them. So they can't take them home and mom and dad can attach to them with their laptop, but it's the only the student's device.
Well, I think the question is like if somebody has a Chromebook and they want to connect to the internet and they use like a cell phone hotspot or something for their Chromebook, what's wrong with that?
And as I said, I mean, it may be that this is some wording that you're catching because we're modeling this after another, and maybe it's just not applicable for us given our, and we just didn't catch it.
With our environment, I don't think it's applicable. I mean, I just.
Because you're saying it filters anyway, right?
It filters anyway.
Through the
I
laptop,
don't care
yeah.
if it's our device, whatever internet source it goes to, it's filtered.
Now, if it's a personal device using a school email, then that's different, right?
That's different.
Then you don't monitor that because it's a personal device.
We don't filter personal devices.
Right. But if it is a school device, like you have, if you have a Chromebook and then you don't have internet, which you need the internet with a Chromebook, everybody knows that. And then, so then you connect to a cell phone hotspot, that should probably be okay. So that's what D is saying, right?
Language probably comes from is before we had content filters that could block as restrictively as we do now. Kids would pop out their hotspot. I can tell you my daughter used to do it. She'd get ticked at the filter, pop out her hotspot on her cell phone, flip it on, join her laptop to her hotspot, and get to where she wanted to go.
But that's out of the school.
That's
control,
out of the
really.
schools, yeah.
But this is referring to.
No school device was in it. She was just had her laptop at school.
Right, yeah. But this is referring to using a school Chromebook on a personal hotspot, right? So I guess it seems like that could maybe be.
Yeah.
Be removed.
Yeah.
That would, our new filtering system would make that line of no effect.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, sir.
So do you need a motion to remove that, or can we just strike that in conversation?
I think we can just strike it.
It was just first reading, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right. So as I read the bottom part of that, that's what caught my attention, but then using such devices to save personal non-school related file. Okay,
Right.
that makes more sense. I was totally gonna be like, well, can you save something, another file, but non-school related.
We put that in there just for you, knowing it was your final board meeting. We want, no, I'm teasing. Good catch.
See if I can
Steph.
catch it.
Thank
The
you.
last moment of glory, right? At the very end.
Perfect. Any other comments or questions? If not, I will entertain a motion.
Okay, Diane, I'll do it. I move that we adopt 3308, students and personal electronic devices, for the second reading.
Whatever you want, first or second?
For the first, well, I guess
First and second?
first and second reading, yeah.
Perfect.
I'll second.
first and a second. Any other comments or questions? If not, I'll call for the roll call vote, please.
That is with corrections.
Oh,
Yes,
sorry.
as presented.
Yes, with that.
With correct, as amended.
Okay. Mr. Valentine?
Yes.
Ms. Thunder?
Yes.
Mr. Mabry?
Yes.
And Mr. Connors?
Yes.
Thank you.
Fantastic. Thank you so much. Okay, next is next meeting agenda. Does anyone have anything they'd like to add to the next event agenda for, what's the date of our next
Is it the
meeting?
retreat or?
Well, no,
That's
the
The one after the retreat?
Right. So, Mr. Scott, will you be bringing to us the additional curriculum that you showed us for special education by then?
I don't think so for that, because I don't think, is there official action taken?
At the June late 22nd or whatever that is.
At the next board meeting, when you're going to be taking
Okay.
action, how we know.
Just so we should add that.
So this, just to clarify, this is really the retreat agenda.
Oh, gotcha.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Which will be the next board meeting, but it will be a
Okay.
retreat. So I think that
That's
would
good.
come to the board, as you said,
Right.
at the meeting, the business meeting following the
Right.
retreat, which is the 25th or something like that, or I can't remember the date, but the one after the June 8th meeting. 22nd. Thank you, Patty.
June.
Okay.
Okay. Everyone's okay with that, the board retreat agenda? Perfect. Okay, at this point, we are going to retreat into executive session for approximately 60 minutes, at which time I will come back and adjourn the meeting. Anyway, thank you so much for your participation.
Thank you.
Few minutes to use the restroom.
Zach thing again.
Thank you for reminding me about Mr. Mabry. It's hard when they're not there.
I know. I got your.